So how far do you reckon you can go to protect yourself, your business, and your home? Well, Joseph Kotrie Monson is a criminal defence lawyer and a director at the Kotrie Monson Solicitors practice. Joseph, good morning to you.
Good morning, Stephen, and how are you?
I'm doing okay, thank you. I've no idea what reasonable force is. Do any of us have any idea what reasonable force is until we're put in that position?
Well, I mean, it's very interesting that the shopkeeper who's interviewed, who has been through clearly a harrowing experience, nothing that I say from a technical point of view should be deemed as criticising him. And by him phoning in, he's doing something heroic and raising something as a conversation that should be discussed. So that's the first thing. As far as the interesting thing about what he said is that he's gone and said, well, of course, reasonable force for me is not necessarily the same as somebody looking at it afterwards. The first thing that any court would look at when assessing, or any prosecuting, reviewing lawyer would look at when assessing reasonable force, is what was going through the person's mind at the time. You know, reasonable force, when you're in reasonable apprehension of a criminal offence or some kind of assault, or even a theft or a damage to your own property, reasonable force will be dictated by the evidence around it.
Yeah,
So
but Joseph, what's going through your mind at the time is very personal to you, depending on the individual you are. Is it reasonable? Is it a reasonable defence to simply say, this is how I felt? It doesn't matter how a jury would feel. It matters how I felt.
Well, actually, if you felt in all the circumstances, in a situation such as this, that your life was in danger, this type of situation, if somebody was waving a gun at you and in response you killed them, well, the law would say that was reasonable. That's the reality. And actually, the idea that we're constantly fed through horror stories in the newspapers of people not being able to protect themselves in their own home, for example, is simply false.
So
and if you ask any lawyer or any judge or anyone who's not a tabloid journalist trying to whip up a frenzy about to what extent reasonable force, not people going beyond reasonable force, ever becomes an issue in criminal cases for them being prosecuted, it basically never does.
So obviously there will be fine detail. I'm aware with 40 seconds left here. There'll be fine detail around Kapil's case, but he had a massive stick in his hand, right? This guy is facing him with a gun. If he had whacked him over the head and killed him, do you think he would have had a reasonable defence?
Not just the law would have said he had a reasonable defence because he was in a reasonable fear of his own life. He had a gun waved in his face. He didn't know if it was real or not. Common sense and the law are at one with this. And what politicians say about this type of thing when they're trying to whip up some kind of tabloid frenzy about whether somebody has a right to protect their castle as an Englishman, simply false.
Okay.
Ask any lawyer, they'll agree with me.
Nice to talk to you, Joseph. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.